Hey there kids, welcome back. David from Atomic Candy, and I am Open by Chance, and what I'm opening up with for you here today is, if you haven't figured it out yet, the Tamashii Nations Captain America. I'm a fan of the Bandai Tamashii Nations. There they are. Bandai also does SH Figure Arts, by the way. I'm sure you're aware. Another really cool action figure line. And this is from the Manga Realization line. And Tamashii Nation does manga realization for like comic book characters from which they primarily have a Marvel license, and they also do movie realizations, primarily Star Wars figures. Let me turn this around. You see I've split the bottom of the box just a little bit, and the reason I cracked it that way is because it's a little rounded on the bottom edge, and so it did not want to stand up very well. So back of the box showing a few posing options just to give you the idea. And I am primarily an in-the-box collector, but the Tamashii Nation's action figures are made in such a way that these can be opened and resealed. So I will be opening this up to give you a review. So we'll go ahead and we'll lift that off completely. And there's not much in there. It just says Samurai Captain America on the inside of the box lid. And then you have your paperwork, and all of these come with a paperwork. A couple of different languages there. And on the back shows you proper assemblage of the various accessories that are included with the figure, just in case you get confused. And here's our Captain America. And it's only one tray. There won't be anything under this if I lift this all the way out. You'll see it's just primarily an empty box. There's a shell on the bottom. We'll take another look. I'll lift this off, the outer clamshell. I don't want to lean that too much forward because you know these pieces will fall out. You got two extra sets of hands, gripping and extended fingers. The shield, what would Captain America be without a shield? A samurai sword with a scabbard, and then the actual figure itself, which I will be taking out and posing here in a moment.
I am ready to obey your every command.
And we are back with our Samurai Captain America, an appropriate title for Captain America. Samurai being powerful military castes of feudal Japan. Look at that face. Good Lord. And even with the A on top of the helmet, I love that. And the wings from like the classic style of Captain America, going back a little bit with the wings there to really almost the beginning. Captain America, first appearance in Captain America Comics #1 way back in March of 1941. War era superhero from Timely Comics. And that's before it was Marvel, because Captain America ran from like what, 1941 to 1950, I think, and then Timely Comics became Atlas Comics. Let's take a look at some of these accessories here. Close up on the fists here. Those are rather not fists, but gripping hands. In about 1950, Timeless became Atlas Comics, but there was no Captain America at that time. They had canceled it. Brought it back briefly in 1953, but it didn't work out under the Atlas Comics title. To reaching or grabbing hands, and I like how there's a star on the back of the armor plate on the glove. There is a lot of detail to this figure. Look at the inside of the hand there. And then Atlas became Marvel, finally, in 1961, I think it was. 1961 they became Marvel Comics. There's the scabbard, sheath if you will. The sheath is actually very plain. And then a samurai sword. A traditional looking samurai sword. I'll bring this closer so you can get a look at the handle. And I think about 1964, Marvel Comics reintroduced Captain America. See the star on the hilt? And a star on the handle, and it looks like it's wrapped in cord, which is appropriate. A warning about the swords with these. The swords with these Tamashii Nations figures are very thin and easily broken, so please do be careful with those. Take a look at the flank of our samurai. You can see the back of his helmet, the armored scales, and you'll see there's a hole on the back of his gauntlet as well as in the center of his back. That is actually for the shield. There is a peg on the shield so that he can wear it. His armored skirts and the shoes. Look at the star on the heel. That's a good detail addition. A lot of thought went into this design. Yeah, I'm really liking this one. I'm liking the colors, the way the colors blend together, and the amount of detail that went into it. There's our instructions again. The other flank of the character. There's another hole for in case you want the shield on the opposite side. And the clip for the sword's scabbard. A lot of detail even on the shoes, and they are tabi, and that means of course that there is a split toe, which is a very Japanese design for footwear. They still wear those today. It's still a very popular style. There is a wakizashi, or kodashi sometimes it's called, the short knife that goes with the katana sword, or the traditional samurai sword. This one does not come out though. I do believe that is attached to the figure, and when I pick it up to test his articulation, I'll take a look at that. Look at the detail, and that is sunken in, and I'll just giving you a really good close-up on his face here, because there is a face under the mask, even though the mask does not come off. You can see the face under his mask, and that's just really good detail all the way around, the neck guard, all of it. I wish that the short blade came out, but I don't believe that it does. I'll find out here in a moment. Let's take a look at his articulation. Shoulder panels are on a little pivot inside, and they can pop off, so do be careful. Good shoulder and elbow rotation. There's a double elbow, so he can bend all the way up. That's a lot of good flexibility on the arms there. Look at that. You can't do that with most figures. Wrist rotation. Pivot on the wrist is a little restricted, going up and down or side to side is slight movement. Mostly it's just rotation. A lot more head movement than I expected considering all of the armor pieces. but they do offer some resistance. And of course, like I said, the mask does not come off, and neither does this knife move at all. Or rather, his wakizashi does not move. It's fixed. The skirts, let me see. I was worried about that actually, that the skirts, because this is not mixed media, that the skirts would restrict some of the hip movement, and they do. He should have more hip movement because there's a lot of pivot under there. You can see all the jointing, but they don't want to move very much because the skirts are kind of holding it back. Knee movement is really good. Look at that. All the way up, double jointed knee. So you can get his knees all the way in. That's really good. The rotation, good ankle tilt. Forward and back motion is kind of limited though because of the size of the shoes. But still, that's a really decent figure. And there's a little secret to this figure here that I'm going to show you. The star on his chest is a shuriken. He can take it off and throw it. Or hold it because he has, you can put it in the gripping hand so that it can look like he's throwing the shuriken from off of his chest. That's a nice little added feature. So why don't we go ahead and get him posed and see how that looks.
Grab his legs, Charlie!
Now we got you.
You got me all right. Got me in perfect position for 1, 2, and 3.
And we are back with our Samurai Captain America, who is prepared, as you can see, to cut down Sheamus by ritually beheading him. Posability on this is really good, despite the fact that his hips are obstructed by the armor skirts, and his torso also, because of the breastplates that he's wearing. The torso really doesn't want to move. But otherwise, arms and legs, there is a great deal of flexibility in them. And one thing I hadn't noticed before either is if you look at his opposing foot or his forward foot, the toes are jointed. So I arched his toes forward so that he could be pressed up a little bit more there, a little more forward. So ankle and foot movement is pretty decent as well. One problem that I did run into was with changing the hands out. The hands felt like they almost didn't want to come off, and then the new ones, when I put the outstretched hand on this side and then the gripping hand on this side, they almost didn't want to go in. And I'll warn you, with any of these figures, Tamashii Nations, any 1/6 scale or 1/12 figures, Mezco 1/12 Collective, or whatever you're into, if those hands are giving you trouble, stop what you're doing, because they will break, and then you're really kind of screwed. There are no replacement parts for these. 1/6 scale figures you could find replacement parts, but with these smaller ones you can't. Now, problem with the shield, and you can already see there is like this double jointed weird peg inside the shield, and I had it inside the arm, but it came out. He's got a handle, so he's fine right now holding it with the handle, but that double jointed peg, because it moves around so much, pressing it into the hole is very difficult because the shield is curved so much. So I had some trouble with that. But again, you know, I love the color on this. I love the sculpting on this. And he gets into a dynamic position very easily because the legs and arms are so well jointed. Poor Sheamus. It's curtains for you. The katana, a little bit of difficulty getting it into the gripped hand. And again, as I warned previously, these swords are very thin. You've got to be careful not to break them. I was a little concerned about that as well, putting it together. So just be careful. Just be careful with this. I wish it had a stand. These figures do not come with stands, and there is not even a hole in the heel so that you could find a stand to accommodate him. The only way that you could do it is to get one of those stands that clip around the back to help him hold himself up. But I don't think, especially for the price point, because you're going to pay $80, $90 for a Tamashii Nations figure. For the price point, I don't think it would be too much to ask to have a small hole in the heel and then to provide even a small platform with a peg for the figure to stand in. Kind of like the way G.I. Joe does and has done since like the mid-80s, where you get like this little stand with a peg on it for like 1 foot. That's all it takes. Again, you can see the positioning on that foot. Funny story about when Marvel brought back Captain America in 1964. There was a comedy series called Not Brand Ek, and it was a parody put out by Marvel about superheroes in comic books. And in the first issue of Not Brand Ek, Captain America appears along with Namor and the Human Torch, because all three of them are like World War II era comic book heroes. All three of them. And Captain America in that issue, as a parody, explains to them why he's relevant coming back into the world of comic book collecting, and the two of them are not. Why he'll be successful re-emerging in a modern comic book culture, and the two of them are just going to get old and fade away. And as he's explaining it to them, they get older and older and older, and he doesn't. And it's really kind of funny and really kind of true, because Captain America even today is an extremely popular character. So what do you think of the Tamashii Nations Captain America? I really like this figure. As I've pointed out several times, I like the look of the figure, I like the colors, I like the sculpting. A lot of work went into this figure. What do you think of him? Do you like this character? Is this someone that you would be interested in? The Marvel line is one that wouldn't be too hard to catch up with. Not as bad as Star Wars. Not that Tamashii Nations produces that many figures, because they really don't. They don't come out that often, and they're not that easy to come by. I think the only US retailer that currently has them is Barnes & Noble. You can find these at Barnes & Noble. GameStop, you can order them if it's a pre-order from GameStop, but I've never seen these in the GameStop stores. But one of the guys told me that, yeah, you know, it's in the system as a pre-order. Like right now, the Tamashii Nations Movie Realizations Star Wars C-3PO is available in this system as a pre-order, but it's not going to the stores so far as I know. So is this a line that you're interested in? Have you been thinking about Tamashii Nations? Do you collect Tamashii Nations? I think it's a really underrated set of figures, especially the Star Wars. The Star Wars is probably the best Star Wars figures on the market right now, the Tamashii Nations. The most highly detailed, most interesting, and most articulated Star Wars figures on the market are coming from Bandai's Tamashii Nations. And these are probably some of the best Marvel figures, notwithstanding, say, Mezco's 112 Collective or Hot Toys, for example. But, you know, Hot Toys is a whole other dynamic of collecting. That's a much higher end if you can afford it. But if you're, and I've said this several times, I've used this phrase, middle of the road. If you're looking for a good middle of the road, high-end collectible action figure, Tamashii Nations is a good choice. SH Figure Arts, that's also by Bandai, and then of course you have the Mezco 112 Collective series. So do you like this figure? Tell me what you think in the comment section down below. Tell me if you're into Tamashii or if you've been thinking about it, or what else are you into? Please do give the video a thumbs up if you got something out of it. I hope you did. share it if you can, subscribe if you're new. Take a look at our other videos. Take a look at our playlists. I do a lot of reviews, a lot of unboxings, toy hunts, and a lot of other fun on the channel, my wife and I. And maybe you'll find something you'll find really entertaining. I hope you do, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching.
I want you to remember something when you get out of jail, pal. The old people around here are my friends. And if I ever hear they have problems again, I'm coming after you. You got that? I've got it. I've got it.